The Dark Zone. The dreaded Dark Zone. The pathetic aliens always avoided the dreaded Dark Zone, like cowards running from a fight. But the brave humans always ventured forth without fear. As the alien onlookers gasped in shock, Captain Stephen Thompson of the Earth Federation ship, EFS, Relentless took command. Uncharted territory. Captain, this star system is uncharted and possibly full of danger, Officer Jim, second in command, said nervously. The Alien Federation is warning us to avoid it. Humanity's resolve. We do not take orders from them, Thompson shouted aggressively, slamming his fist on the command console. Humanity did not become the dominant power in the galaxy by cowering in fear. We must establish a foothold in this system, or the weaker alien races will think we have gone soft. Landing on the alien world. The human shuttle touched down on the landing pad with a hiss of hydraulics. Captain Thompson stepped out first, his boots clanking on the metal surface. He squinted in the bright light of the alien sun, taking in the strange architecture of the Federation headquarters, a sprawling crystalline structure, all smooth curves and shimmering surfaces, unlike anything he had seen before. Alien delegation. A delegation of aliens was waiting to greet them. They were tall and slender, with smooth blue skin and large almond-shaped eyes. The leader of the group, High Counselor Villax, stepped forward, towering over Thompson by at least a foot. Villax gave a curt nod of greeting, his expression unreadable. Introduction. Welcome to the Galactic Federation headquarters, Captain Thompson, Villax said in a deep, resonant voice. Please follow me inside. Inside the headquarters, Thompson motioned for his team to fall in behind him as they followed Villax into the building. The interior was just as strange and alien as the exterior. The walls were made of a translucent material that seemed to glow from within, and strange, organic-looking sculptures lined the halls. Meeting the Federation, Villax led them into a large circular room where representatives from a dozen different alien races were seated around a central table. They turned to stare at the humans as they entered, some looking curious, others apprehensive. Thompson could feel the weight of their gazes on him. Diplomatic relations. Allow me to introduce Captain Thompson and his team from the human race, Villax said to the assembled aliens. They come seeking to establish diplomatic relations with the Federation. Suspicion and mistrust. A murmur went through the room. Thompson stepped forward, clearing his throat. Thank you for welcoming us here today, he said, projecting confidence into his voice. We humans are a peaceful race. We only wish to explore the galaxy and forge new alliances. Caution and war. Villax nodded slowly. I'm afraid we have reason to be cautious of unknown species, he said. The Federation has been at war with the Zorgans, a hostile insectoid race, for decades now. We cannot afford to let our guard down. Proving intentions. I assure you, we are not a threat, Thompson replied firmly. Baseless accusations. A thin, green-skinned alien spoke up from across the table. You'll forgive us if we don't take you at your word, he said, his voice dripping with suspicion. In fact, I've been studying your species since you arrived in this sector, and I must say, you bear a striking resemblance to the Zorgans themselves. Outrage and defiance. Thompson bristled at the accusation. That's preposterous, he snapped, slamming his hand on the table. We are nothing like those creatures. Sowing seeds of mistrust. The green alien, who Thompson would later learn was named Tylo, leaned forward with a sneer. Oh, really? The same bipedal structure, the same smooth skin, the same facial features. How do we know you're not simply Zorgan spies sent to infiltrate the Federation? Uphill battle. The room erupted into shocked whispers. Thompson could feel his face flushing with anger. I won't stand here and listen to these baseless accusations, he growled. We came here in peace, and this is how you treat us. Holding judgment. Villax held up a hand for silence. Enough, he said firmly. We will investigate these claims thoroughly before making any judgments. In the meantime, Captain Thompson, I suggest you and your team return to your shuttle until we call for you. A difficult task ahead. Thompson wanted to argue, but he knew it was pointless. The damage had been done. As he turned to leave, he could feel the eyes of the aliens boring into his back. The seeds of mistrust had been sown, and he knew it would be an uphill battle to prove humanity's intentions were pure. The Zorgan invasion. Alarms and chaos. The tense negotiations were suddenly shattered by the blaring of alarms throughout the crystalline structure. Red lights flashed, and a deafening siren wailed. High Counselor Villax's eyes widened as he looked at a holographic display. Zorgan attack. A Zorgan fleet just dropped out of hyperspace. They're attacking the planet. Villax shouted over the alarms. Panic erupted in the chamber as the various alien representatives scrambled to evacuate, some literally leaping over the conference table in their haste to reach the exits. Escape to the shuttle. Within seconds, Thompson, Jim, and Sarah were left standing alone in the empty room, the alarms still screaming. We need to get back to the shuttle now, Thompson barked. Fighting their way out. They sprinted through the winding hallways, the flashing red emergency lights casting eerie shadows. In the hangar bay, they skidded to a halt. Their sleek human shuttle sat on the landing pad, but it was surrounded by a dozen Zorgan soldiers. Battle in the hangar. The insectoid warriors were huge, easily 7 feet tall, their segmented purple exoskeletons bristling with jagged spikes. Each one carried a large, intimidating energy blaster rifle. Surrender, pathetic humans. The lead Zorgan soldier droned in a hissing, metallic voice. You cannot escape. Taking a stand. I don't think so. Bugface. Thompson growled under his breath. In a blur of motion, he whipped out his plasma rifle and opened fire. Searing bolts of blue plasma streaked across the hangar, catching the Zorgan off guard. Superior human weapons. 2 insectoid soldiers were blasted back. Smoking holes burned clean through their carapaces. Sarah and Jim drew their weapons and joined the fight, diving for cover behind storage crates. The human guns proved superior, their advanced plasma and Gauss rounds easily chewing through the Zorgan exoskeletons and energy shields. Engaging the enemy. Jim rolled behind a forklift as the aliens returned fire, the sizzling energy blasts leaving glowing scorch marks on the deck. Popping up, he drilled the lid Zorgan right between its compound eyes, the creature's head bursting like a smashed pumpkin. Victory in the hangar. This is what you get for attacking our allies, Thompson shouted as he gunned down 2 more soldiers with precise shots. Sarah vaulted over a crate, activating her powered armor's cloaking field. She shimmered and disappeared, then reappeared behind a Zorgan, burying her combat knife in a gap in its carapace. The alien shrieked and collapsed. Iker sprang. Escape to the shuttle. Alex let loose with his rotary Gauss cannon, the high-velocity slugs ripping 3 Zorgan to shreds in a heartbeat. "Dan, I love this gun," he laughed. In a matter of moments, the humans had cut down the Zorgan troops, smoking insectoid corpses strewn across the hangar. Thompson waved to the others. "Get to the shuttle." Lifting off, they ran up the ramp and threw themselves into the cockpit seats. Thompson's hands flew over the controls as the engines roared to life. The shuttle lifted off the pad and rocketed out of the hangar. Chaos in the skies. Chaos reigned in the skies above the planet. Dozens of angular purple Zorgan warships hung in orbit, hammering the world with plasma cannons and kinetic impactors. Flights of insectoid fighters buzzed between them, strafing the surface with energy blasts. Human reinforcements. The planetary defense fleet was already burning, many of the delicate, graceful Federation ships shattered and drifting. Thompson jinked and weaved the shuttle through the maelstrom, narrowly dodging the flak bursts and energy beams filling the air. Odyssey to the rescue. Proximity alarms wailed as a Zorgan frigate loomed before them, its spinal railgun swiveling to lock on. But then a storm of missiles, hypervelocity kinetic slugs, and directed energy beams slammed into the Zorgan ship's flank. Explosions blossomed along its hull, and it staggered, reeling. Battle above the planet. The U.S. Odyssey. The U.S. Odyssey swept into view, the blocky human battleship driving hard into the heart of the enemy fleet. Its advanced shields shimmered as they shrugged off the Zorgon return fire. Thompson grinned savagely. Cavalry's here. Docking with the Odyssey, he deftly guided the shuttle into the Odyssey's open hangar bay. The humans ran down the ramp and made for the bridge at top speed. Chaos on the bridge. On the Odyssey's bridge, controlled chaos reigned as the crew fought the ship. The holographic tactical display showed the Odyssey cutting into the Zorgon formation like an avenging angel, tearing the enemy apart with its superior weapons, even as more insectoid ships arrived and swarmed it like angry hornets. Taking command, Thompson, Jim, and Sarah ran onto the bridge. Thompson practically leaped into the command chair. "What's our status?" he demanded. "Fighting back. We're giving the bugs a hell of a bloody nose," the weapons officer reported. "But there's a lot of them. We can't hold them off forever. Admiral Korov is ordering us to regroup and withdraw." Refusing to retreat, Thompson shook his head vehemently. "Negative. We're not abandoning the feds. We stay and fight." Battle rages on. The Odyssey shuddered as another volley of plasma blasts hammered into its rapidly failing shields. Sparks erupted from overloaded consoles on the bridge, filling the air with the acrid stench of burnt circuitry. Holding the line. Reroute all available power to forward shields and weapons, Thompson barked, his fingers flying over the command console. His face was illuminated by the angry red glow of warning lights. Engineering struggles. In the heart of engineering, Alex frantically worked to keep the ship's vital systems online. He ripped open access panels, bypassing damaged circuits and jury-rigging makeshift repairs. Sweat poured down his face as he fought to coax more speed and power from the straining fusion cores. Pushing the limits. "I'm giving her all she's got, Captain," he shouted over the comm, his voice nearly drowned out by the crescendo of alarms and explosions. "But those damn bugs are hitting us too hard. We can't take much more of this." Desperate measures. On the tactical display, Sarah's fighter wing danced and whirled around the massive bulk of the Zorgon flagship, peppering its hull with blasts from their pulse cannons and fusion missiles. The small, agile human craft dodged the storms of flak and sizzling energy beams the flagship spat back at them. Regrouping. "Sarah, get your team out of there," Thompson ordered over the comm. "That flagship's too heavily defended. We need to regroup." The last stand. A brutal salvo. His words were cut off as a particularly brutal salvo slammed into the Odyssey, sending him sprawling to the deck. The main lights flickered and died, plunging the bridge into darkness save for the hellish red emergency lighting. Damage reports. Hull breach in sectors 12 through 17. The damage control officer shouted, his face pale. "We're venting atmosphere. Casualty reports coming in from all decks. A traitor among us." Thompson dragged himself back into the command chair, blood trickling down his face from a gash on his forehead. He stared at the tactical display, watching grimly as more and more of the Odyssey's systems blinked out. A cold realization settled over him. Betrayal. The Zorgons knew exactly where to hit us, exactly how to counter our tactics and technology. He said quietly, his voice hard as steel. "It's as if they could read our minds. We have a traitor." Abandoning ship. He closed his eyes for a long moment, a heavy weight settling on his shoulders. When he opened them again, they burned with grim determination. "Alex, Sarah, I need you both back on the Odyssey now," he ordered over the comm. "We're abandoning ship. Refusing to leave. Abandoning. But Jim, we can still fight. We can't just leave you." Sarah's voice crackled back, edged with desperation. "A captain's duty." "I'm not asking, Sarah." "That's an order," Thompson said firmly. "The Odyssey is lost, but I can still buy you and the rest of the crew time to get to the escape pods." A final farewell. "Jim, no. We're not leaving you behind," Alex shouted, his voice thick with emotion. "A solemn order. You have to," Thompson said softly. "Someone has to stay and pilot the ship, and I'm the captain. This is my duty." Silence and resolve. Silence hung over the comm for a long heartbeat. Then Sarah's voice came back, trembling but resolute. "Aye, Captain. We'll see you on the other side." A moment of sadness. Thompson allowed himself a small, sad smile. "Give 'em hell for me." He cut the comm and turned to face the remaining bridge crew. "You all heard the order. Abandon ship. Get to the escape pods now. Sacrifice and survival. A lonely bridge." They hesitated, faces torn, but one by one they nodded and ran for the exits. Soon, Thompson was alone on the shattered bridge, the only sound the wail of alarms and the groan of failing bulkheads. Charging the enemy, he gripped the control yoke and swung the Odyssey around, aiming its battered prow at the heart of the Zorgan formation. The battleship shook and shuddered as more blasts pounded its abused hull, consoles exploding and bulkheads buckling. But Thompson's hands were steady on the controls as he gunned the engines to full, the abused fusion cores screaming under the strain. A defiant last stand. The Zorgan ships loomed larger and larger in the view screen, filling it with their jagged alien contours. As the range dropped and the blaring proximity alarms reached a fever pitch, Thompson's lips curled back in a defiant snarl. "From Hell's heart, I stab at thee," he whispered. Collision course. The Odyssey, trailing fire and debris like a dying star, rammed into the lead Zorgan battleship at full speed. The ship shook and groaned as it plunged towards the Zorgan flagship, its hull scorched and torn, leaking atmosphere and debris. Flames licked along its flanks as its engines pushed beyond their limits, the ship's frame shuddering under the strain. A captain's resolve. Its few remaining weapons stuttered and flashed, spitting defiant fire at the looming alien warship. On the bridge, Thompson clung to the sparking, half-melted wreckage of the command chair, his uniform tattered and stained with blood and sweat. Gritting his teeth against the pain of his injuries, he kept his eyes locked on the view screen, the Zorgan flagship growing larger and larger until it filled the screen. Proximity alarms. Proximity alarms blared, nearly drowned out by the tortured scream of overstressed bulkheads. Thompson's fingers danced over the controls, coaxing every last ounce of speed and maneuverability out of the dying Odyssey. He jinked and juked, narrowly evading the worst of the Zorgan's fire, even as the ship's shields collapsed and its armor peeled away. Final moments. He could hear the shouts and screams of the wounded and dying over the comm, the last desperate struggles of his crew as they fought to buy him time. But he pushed it all away, his focus narrowing to the single overriding goal: take out the flagship, no matter the cost. Reinforcements arrive. Critical range. The range ticked down, the Odyssey shaking harder and harder as the Zorgan poured fire into it. 500 kilometers. 300. 100. Thompson's finger hovered over the trigger for the ship's last salvo of fusion missiles, ready to fire at point-blank range, and damn the consequences. The Titan's arrival. 50 kilometers. 20. 10. Thompson could see the pitted, scorched hull of the Zorgan ship, could make out the individual weapon emplacements and sensor clusters. He took a deep breath, preparing for oblivion. Unexpected help. And then, out of nowhere, a blinding flash of light erupted in the center of the view screen. Thompson flinched back, shielding his eyes, certain for a split second that one of the Zorgan weapons had hit something critical and the Odyssey was going up in a ball of plasma. A beacon of hope. But as the glare faded and his vision cleared, he saw something impossible. A massive, gleaming silver shape, easily 3 times the size of the Zorgan flagship, hung in space where the flash had been. Its hull was smooth and unblemished, its lines sleek and predatory, like a shark cutting through the void. The U.S. Titan. Thompson's jaw dropped as he recognized it. The U.S. Titan, the most advanced and powerful warship ever built by human hands. And there, proudly emblazoned on its flank, was a name that sent a shock of recognition through Thompson's battered body: Admiral Elena Hawkins. Admiral's return. "Mom," he whispered, his voice hoarse with disbelief. "The Titan's assault." As if in answer, the Titan's weapons came to life, a storm of missiles and energy beams leaping from its hull and slamming into the Zorgan fleet with devastating force. The alien ships, so terrible and overwhelming mere moments before, crumpled like tin cans under the onslaught, their hulls shattering and their reactors going critical in blinding flashes of light. Turning the tide. The Zorgan flagship, looming over the Odyssey like a monstrous insect poised to strike, suddenly found itself in the Titan's crosshairs. A barrage of quantum torpedoes ripped into its hull, tearing through its armor like paper and burrowing deep into its core. For a split second, nothing happened, and then the Zorgan ship vanished in a sun-bright explosion, reduced to an expanding cloud of glowing